Hello class, we finally made it to lesson 11, which is about your personal finances. So make sure you finish up your full 4 weeks of recording your finances. Depending on when you started to track them, you may be still tracking your finances part way into this week, but you should be finishing that up this week and then reporting on it in your application activity. So it's kind of exciting to be at this point. I just wanted to talk about a couple of things. First of all, in the lesson material and quiz instructions, we've got a website that could be a little confusing, so I just wanted to show it to you real quick. Here in step 1, it wants you to read the gospel topic page on finances, which is really interesting. So when I pulled it up, I started reading through it and I was like, wow, this is a really short article. It's only 2 paragraphs long, and then there's all these other resources. But what about the actual article? And I finally realized there's a read more button. So make sure you click that read more button and read the entire article on it, okay? So just read that article, and then as it says, you can read some of the linked information if that's interesting to you. It's not required, but as you're scrolling down, if you want to look at these scriptures or these different talks by prophets, then go for it. Go ahead and click on those and enjoy exploring. Then there will be other things for you to study about financial self-reliance. So go ahead and study those materials, and they should be very thought-provoking and good stuff to look at. So I hope you enjoy that. And then if we come over to our application activity instructions, we have a few steps to complete over here. I wanted to go over that. So step 1 is to finish tracking all of your spending for the past 4 weeks. If you have no way to reliably track the last 4 weeks, if you have not been on top of it, if you have not been tracking those expenses, then don't worry about it. That opportunity is kind of past at this point. So, but take whatever you have recorded and make sure that that is input in your expense worksheet. Remember this thing here where you put down in each of these boxes how much you spent in each category. And like it said, you don't have to spend something in each of the categories. Go ahead and put a 0 if there's nothing interesting there. And then it automatically totals it up for you down here in the grand total. So just make sure you finish filling that out. That's your first step. Your second step is to go do a little bit more exploring. It wants you to go to the financial calculators, and some of them I noticed were listed over here in the article, over here in financial calculators. So it wants you to officially go explore those. The link here brings you to the full list of calculators though. That one only had a little bit. So make sure you come here and explore these calculators. They help you figure out how soon you could pay off certain debts, how much should I put aside if I want to save up for certain things. So they just help you quickly figure out some of those things. It asks you to spend at least 20 minutes exploring and to look at least 3 different calculators. Okay, so make sure you do that. For those of you who are not in the United States, I apologize. This website is all in US dollars, but you can use the Google Finance Converter to turn it into your own country's currency. So I hope that's helpful. So that's the second step, is to do some exploring. And your third step, and feel free to use what you've learned from these calculators to do this third step, is to set up your own basic monthly budget. Now some of you may already have budgets. Go ahead and just go through these steps in your budget if you already have one. If not, go ahead and create one on the expense sheet that we already looked at. And I will show you how to do that at the end of this video if you want to know how to set up your own budget. Okay? And you'll do these different steps in there. But this budget will remain private. You do not have to turn it into me. You just have to finish the task in order to respond appropriately to the questions in the application activity template. Does that make sense? So you do not need to turn in your budget or your spending. Those can remain private. I know that financial information can be sensitive, so feel free to keep that to yourself, and then fill out the application activity template. Let's take a look at that real quick. It's just going to ask you where did you seem to be spending a lot of money, and maybe talk about why that's happening, some things you think you could adjust, where do you seem to be spending an appropriate amount of money, too much or too little amount of money, and then write one complete paragraph, and I will hold you to that, so please write a full paragraph, at least 4 lengthy sentences, to describe insights you've had from tracking your money. List the titles of the financial calculators you accessed. Remember, you should have at least looked at 3, and then a complete paragraph to describe which calculator was most beneficial. So these are just to reflect on all the work you did, and again, to keep your finances private. So go ahead and fill that out. And now that's all I wanted to go over for this week's lesson. But for those of you who want to see how to start building a basic budget using the expense calculator that you already downloaded, go ahead and stay tuned, and I will go over that really quick. Okay? So to do these 3 basic steps, you can just come over to this expense tracker that you downloaded in lesson 7, I think it was, and I will include a link in my announcement, so it should be right under this video. So you should have this already filled out. I'm just going to put in some random numbers just so that we have some numbers inputted. But you should have all of these categories filled out with whatever amount of money you spent in them, right? So it's totaled it up for you. And now what I would recommend doing to create a nice simple budget is just to add these categories. Add planned spending over here, and that's what it asks us to do. Oh, I'm sorry, the first step is to write down your monthly income. So come down here after grand total and go ahead and write down monthly income in this box. You just click on it and start typing. And then under grand total, go ahead and write in what that monthly income is. Let's say my monthly income is $700. So just write 700, and now you've got your income right there. And then next, write down the amounts you would like to spend each month in each category listed on the expense tracking spreadsheet. So to do this, go ahead and write planned spending right here, and you can create a new column where you write down how much you would like to spend. So maybe you're going through, and you can use this information to help build your budget, right? You can look at tithes and offerings and say, oh yeah, I'm spending not quite the right amount of money. Let's see, if my monthly income is 700, I should probably be spending 70 there to give a full 10%. And how much do I plan? Maybe I realize I can do food and personal a little bit lower, so maybe I'll plan for less there. And maybe I realize housing is going to be a little higher than I thought. So go ahead and write in the numbers that make sense to you here. And now I'm just going to put in some more numbers because I don't want to take up too much of your time doing this tutorial. But go ahead and use this column to write out the expenses you're planning. And if you have other categories that you want to add, go ahead and add them here. So maybe you want a category, let's say that you buy a lot of games, that games are something that really interests you. So make one of your categories games and give yourself a planned spending there. And let's say maybe you've got a pet and you need a pet budget. So add your pet budget and put in how much you have for that. Go ahead and add any categories that you need to. If you run out of lines, right click on this last one and just click insert, and that should create a new row for you, and you can do that as many times as you need. Okay, so once you've written out your planned spending, a way to quickly total that is to let's see here, go ahead and click here next to our grand total of what we did spend. Let's create a grand total for what we plan to spend. So click here and then just click the summary button over here. Click the little down arrow and click sum. So that means it's going to add things up. And then just click the first cell that you want it to start adding from. And then go to the last cell you want it to add and press Shift on your keyboard and then click that cell. And that will select all of those cells in between. Then press Enter and it will sum it all up for you. So now you have a sum of what your planned spending is. And let's actually move this over. So now we can see what we've planned and what our income is. Uh-oh, we are planning to spend more than we make. So that's where we come over to our next item. So we totaled our planned monthly expenses. Now it says if the total is more than your monthly income, readjust your planned monthly expenses. And this is where we are very glad that we created a sum, because now as I go through and say, oh, I guess I can actually cut that in half, and I've actually just changed plans, so maybe I can lower that as well, and I'm actually not going to need as much there. So you can adjust things and see where you can cut down until you start to have an amount that is under what you make. So you keep watching this number until it drops low enough, right? So let's get rid of one more number. Okay, phew! Now we are finally under our monthly income. So we can even calculate how much is left over. We can click here and create our own equation. If this is too advanced, just ignore it. You can just minus it out on your own. But I like to have these equations in. You just press the equals button and it knows that you're making an equation. Then click your monthly income first. Then press the minus button on your keyboard and click the grand total for your planned spending and press Enter. So now it will minus this out. So now we've got 100 left over that we could put into savings. So maybe we create another category called savings. We put 100 into it. Oops. And our equation is not long enough now. Oops. Well, I just slightly messed things up. I hope you forgive me for not being perfect in this little tutorial. Let's do that through C4. There we go. And now our leftover is 0. So there's an example of how you could create a quick budget, and then as you go through a new month, you can just erase all of these spendings and start tracking it all over again. And make sure that your actual spending is matching your planned spending. And this is a good way to make sure you're doing what you want to with your money. So there we go. We went through all the steps with our budget. It also says if you have 0 planned for monthly tithes or savings, readjust your other planned monthly expenses so that you can begin to pay tithing and save a small amount for emergencies each month. So we did adjust for that in our little tutorial, but make sure you're looking out for that. So there's an example of how to create your own very simple budget using this expense tracker, and you can reuse it each month just by erasing this column here and re-entering in what you're spending. You can adjust your planned spending over here and make sure that you're always staying underneath your monthly income so you're not adding to any debts or creating any debts. And there's just some basics. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions, just let me know. This can be a really exciting activity. So yeah, I look forward to hearing from you.